Hi, in this example, you see how you can reuse existing logic and artifacts to bring them over to Neptune in a simple but efficient way, such as, in this case, Web Dynpro apps from SAP. Before beginning the transformation process from SAP over to Neptune DXP, you should start by identifying the Web Dynpro apps and their respective data provider classes that you will need to work on. Once you've identified the apps and their data provider classes, you can start the transformation process. In this example, we're creating a separate data provider class to have a clean and reusable asset for future apps built in Neptune DXP. In this new data provider class, the Neptune REST API interface is applied so that it can be leveraged as a RESTful API at a later stage of the transformation process. Now that the new data provider class is created and with the logic applied to it, start by accessing the Neptune DXP SAP Edition cockpit and then the API Designer tool. Define the operations which will be based on the data provider methods, and then you can test these operations via the Swagger UI tab. Now that we've seen that the API is working, all we have to do now is to consume it externally via the Neptune DXP Open Edition cockpit. Start by accessing the API Designer tool, add a new API connection, and then press the Import button. If you have a connection configured between Neptune DXP Open Edition and SAP Edition, you can immediately access all the created REST APIs from SAP Edition and import them to Open Edition. And since this API was created in Neptune's DXP SAP Edition, we need to add authentication to it in order to be able to access the data from SAP. As a quick way to test this API, you can also access the API client tool to see if the data is coming from SAP as expected. So, since the backend access to the data coming from SAP is now configured, we can start creating the front-end UI via the App Designer tool. In here, you can create and maintain apps via two methods. The first method is, which you'll see now, and this method is through the Build with NAIA functionality, which is the no-code way of enabling users to leverage NAIA's capabilities within the App Designer tool. With this method, users can create the front-end layouts by uploading images that can be converted to UI5 components, or by simply prompting NAIA via chat to generate views that will be added automatically to the app view. You can also add logic for the app by selecting a target event such as the button press, where you can ask NAIA to apply your logic. The second method is the low-code app designer, where you can leverage the front-end layout and logic that was added via the Build with NAIA functionality, making the building process much easier and faster But not only that, you can also maintain and apply further changes to the app via low-code. The low-code app designer provides you with drag-and-drop functionalities and code snippets to enhance your app. In the low-code app designer, you'll see that 2 REST API components are added. This will enable the app to consume and load the data from SAP onto both the main page and detailed page, respectively. In order to connect the data coming from the API components, you can, for example, add a multimodal component and bind the API response to it. Then you only need to add a model path to the table component to display the data to the user. The main objective is when starting the app, the data will be loaded automatically and then enable the user to navigate from the main page to the detailed page to view more data related to the pressed item from the list view. Since in the original Web Dynpro application the user navigation is based on pressing the product ID, we can do exactly the same by adding a link component and replacing the text component added by NAIA, enabling you to fine-tune the application based on your business requirements. In order to enable navigation from the main page to the detail page, you can add logic, for example, after pressing the link component. You can access the code snippets menu by right-clicking inside the script. Once the logic is applied to the script event, you can preview the app in a separate browser tab and access the Developer Tools console to debug the app. In this example, we want to see if there's a response from the second API after sending the product ID to SAP when pressing one of the link components. Now that we know the second API has a response with the detailed data from SAP, we can go back to the app designer and add logic in the AJAX success event of the second API. In here, we can apply the response data and add navigation to the detail page after this API is called. When a user presses the link component with the product ID, it will send that same ID to SAP and return the detailed data while also navigating to the detailed page automatically.